Hey everyone, Kathy the Vegan Prepper here, and I am walking you through the process of creating a mathematical tincture. In this case, I am doing a stevia leaf tincture to create my own stevia extract liquid drops. And so let me go ahead and show you the nuts and bolts of the process, and then I will go and find a quiet place to tell you kind of the details behind it. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here I have weighed out about 100 grams of stevia leaf. Oh, and now it says 100. It's like the 1 gram mark. It's really hard to get it exact. So you can see that before it's going in the blender, it's at the 3-cup mark, essentially. So I'm going to be putting this now into the blender, and we're going to powder it up a bit. And then you'll see the volume reduction once that process has taken place. All right. So now I'm not wanting to create, a fine powder. Just sort of break it up enough that we expose a little bit more of the plant matter when we pour over the alcohol. And then, yeah, so that's gonna have to be good enough, because if it gets too powdery, what ends up happening is the plant matter will just clump, and you won't end up with a very easily shakeable or stirrable or strainable tincture. So I'll go ahead and put this back in the jar. All right, so now we're back in the original jar. It's 100 grams still, but you can see just that little bit of blending has reduced the volume size of the plant matter to less than 2 cups. Sorry, you might not be able to actually see. Lighting is terrible, sorry. So here's the 2-cup mark, and then there it is. And then that's gonna matter a lot in the next step, which I will go ahead and show you probably in my room, back where it's quieter. So stay tuned. Okay, I am back in my room, and I am able to finish this out hopefully very well for you guys without too many interruptions. But like I just showed, reducing the volume of the herb is also pretty important, because when you're making a mathematical tincture, which is a medicinal strength infusion, you're using a certain ratio, and the ratio often of the menstruum, which in this case is rum, and the plant matter is actually often, like, it doesn't ever seem like it's enough liquid for how much plant matter you have. So with the Folk method, you would have this amount of plants. Actually, you'd still just have it up to like 3 cups. You wouldn't probably break it down at all. And then you just like have an inch or 2 of liquid above, and you just sort of do it like eyeballing it. This is like specifically measured. So we started off with 100 grams of stevia, and to make a mathematical medicinal grade tincture from almost any dry herb, you do a 1:5 ratio of plant matter by weight to menstruum by volume. So we're using grams just because it makes it a lot easier. This is all being taken from this insanely excellent book, which I would recommend to anybody who's serious about making a lot of kind of medicinal grade tinctures or any kind of preparation, syrups, vinegars, whatever you can think of. This is an excellent book. Richo Cech is just like so methodical, and I don't know that I would need any other book. So a 1:5 then would be with 100 grams of the plant matter, you need 500 milliliters of your menstruum, which is up to this line here. This is another reason I just love using ball jars, because they're like so handy. The measurements are right there. So you can see that the menstruum is actually going to cover the plant matter, which is incredible. It doesn't always happen that way. But that's why that initial step is so important, because then, you know, you can actually get it to cover, versus if the plant matter were still up at the 3 cup mark all the way up here, that would not be enough alcohol to cover all of the plant matter. So anyway, basically it is as simple at this point as pouring your alcohol over. And if you can hear that, it's even bubbling like we're in potions in Harry Potter. I just sort of use a little chopstick. And the reason I use a chopstick is because the plant matter, the herb, I just realized I'm saying plant matter over and over again. The herb has a tendency to stick to, you know, whatever it is that you're stirring with. And so with a chopstick, there's less surface area on your stirring stick versus like a spoon. You could end up with a ton of herbs stuck to the spoon and not really have a good way of getting it off, at least in my experience. So I just switched to a chopstick, and then that way there's not as much herb stuck to the stirring implement. Spoon. Whatever. Anyway, so sort of stir that up, get it nice and wet, and breaking up any clumps. And then you have a nice tincture that will sit for a good 6 weeks and then be hopefully a very powerful extract. And then in this case, I'm just hoping to make my own stevia drops, like my own stevia extract sweet drops to sweeten whatever. And then have all of the plant properties intact without having to worry about it having any further processing. And then I will trust this a lot more than what I would buy from a store. Unless I was buying from like a reputable herbalist who basically went through the same procedure. Anyway, neighbors. It's like my kids are taken care of and then the neighbors go. Okay, so now that this is basically totally made and ready, ignore the label. This is old. I will relabel this with what it is. Let me talk to you just a little bit about stevia leaf. So a lot of people have a kind of a misconception about stevia. They think of it as a processed food, such as Splenda or like sorbitol or aspartame. They think of it as an artificial sweetener, like those, like a chemical thing. And it is not. Stevia leaf it's from a plant. This is in its whole form as I buy it from Mountain Rose Herbs. It came to me full, and then this is where it is now. I sweeten every single one of my teas with stevia. I just use, it is typically anywhere from a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half or a half tablespoon for a jar this big of tea. And then for a half-gallon jar of tea, I'll put in like a tablespoon. And I just put it in at the beginning with all of the herbs and let it brew for 30 to 40 minutes. And then it comes out sweet and delicious. And nobody ever knows that it's not sweetened with sugar or honey. When I find that when I use it in the whole leaf form, it doesn't have a bitter aftertaste. There's no weirdness in your mouth. Like when you use the drops, you use too many and it's like sharp. So I'm going to be seeing if making my drops myself ends up kind of fixing that problem just a bit. We'll see. But that is kind of all about stevia. It is a natural plant. It has been shown to be tonic to the pancreas, meaning it is supportive to the pancreas. So this is essentially a sweetener that is helpful to your pancreas. It's like, now if that, whose idea does that sound like for real? Like, it's just like, okay. But also it is an astringent, like I actually didn't even know until I was preparing for this video and I was reading about it in here. It is an astringent wound healer. So it sounds like you can use it, like once you have the tincture made. I should have marked my page. Sorry guys. Once you have the tincture made, you can use it as a digestive aid, apparently, and as an astringent wound healer, which is what I just said. So it's probably something that you could put onto a bandage, to put onto a wound. If you're anything where you'd be using an astringent thing to heal a wound. And I think that that would also probably include some rashes. Like there's certain things that really do benefit from an astringent herbal application. And that is definitely something that you can research. But this is not just going to be about sweetness. It's also going to have a medicinal use. So I'm excited about that. And I wanted to discuss also my menstruum, which is the rum that I am using, because when you're making a medicinal tincture, you are typically using, like typically the ratio is 50, not for everything, but for most things. And then this book like really does outline a lot of different ones. For the most part, when you're using dry plant matter, your alcohol ratio will be 50% alcohol to 50% water. And if you buy vodka, I believe, now I don't know a lot about liquor, but if you buy vodka, that is already 50% alcohol, 50% water. But a bottle of vodka like this size is like $50 or something. And I make a lot of tinctures. So unfortunately for now, my budget is informing my choices. And I wish that I could afford the more expensive organic grain alcohols and all of that. But for now, I am using the spiced rum, which was only like $13 for 1.75 liters at Costco. And it is 46% alcohol by volume. So that means that it's, 64% water, 46% alcohol, and no, sorry, 54% water, 46% alcohol. And for me, that's like close enough. I can't get it to be perfect because I'm not buying a higher strength of alcohol. This is the highest strength that I can get in my budget. Now, if I were using organic grain alcohol that's like 198 proof, then you typically would take that and mix it 50-50 with distilled water, and that's where you would end up with your correct alcohol ratio, alcohol to water ratio. Also, a lot of times when you're making a fresh plant tincture, you want an alcohol ratio that's more like 75% alcohol, 25% water, and so then you need to mix your own from a much stronger grain alcohol. But that's not what I have access to easily right now. So I'm just using this, and that is close enough to me to the 50-50 ratio. And my medicines work very well. I give these tinctures away to people for now. I don't have an official practice. I'm not like an official herbalist, but I have been making these for quite a while, and people kind of know about me and they come to me and ask me about things. And then I will, without, trying to treat them, just let them know, hey, this tends to be good for pain, or this tends to be good for nerve pain. If you want to try it, go ahead, or whatever, And so people, I have gotten pretty much nothing but good feedback so far on the things that I make. So I think that about covers everything that I really wanted to say about the tincturing process. It's a very easy thing. And the hardest part about this, I believe, and I have a solution for that too. The hardest part about this, I believe, is just remembering after 6 weeks to decant it and get it into the medicine cabinet or the apothecary that I have. And I do need to do a tour of my apothecary. It's pretty good. But this year, on kind of a whim and just for fun, I decided to start making my medicines on the new moon and full moon dates of the year. And it was just a fun way of making sure that I was able to actually get that done, because life is crazy, as I've said in many videos. And I wear many hats and I'm pulled in many directions, but there's a lot of stuff that I want to take care of. So that was just kind of a fun cosmic schedule. And it's like my special night, and everybody knows twice a month, sometimes 3 times a month, depending on what the moon is doing during that month. But mostly twice a month, Mom has her time at night to make medicines and decant medicines and do preparations and stock that apothecary. One of the accidental benefits of that, not only was I making more medicines, but I discovered partway through the year the phases of the moon. Well, I didn't discover this, I knew this. The phase of the moon is essentially 28 days to go through a full moon cycle. So from full moon to full moon is 28 days, and the same thing with new moon to new moon. So if you add one more half cycle, so that ends up being 6 weeks. And so having that time every single month, I was automatically 6 weeks later doing herbal medicine stuff on that night. And I was able to not forget and decant medicines. And I have built a huge store this year, just kind of because originally I was setting out to have fun, but then accidentally discovering that the moon makes an excellent timekeeper for herbal preparations. And so it is November 4th. So it is not a full moon or new moon day, but a full moon was just on October 31st, Halloween. And I'm going to basically time this according to that full moon. And then this one will be in kind of an odd duck, and I'll just have to try to remember a few days after 2 new moons from now, I will decant this. And so, yeah, that ended up working really well. So it's something that you might try to employ, and it just feels kind of cool, honestly, to make herbal medicine timed with the moon. Okay. I think it's an ancient practice and it's great. And it just is, like I said, a great timekeeper, and then you won't forget as much, especially if you have a lot to keep track of. You sort of let it keep track for you. And that's great. So I think that that is it. So that's how the process of making a mathematical medicinal strength tincture. It happens to be stevia this time, but it is the same for most dry leafy herbs. If you're looking at things like roots, it might be a little different. And I need to be closing this out. Just like get this book and learn how to do it. But here, just really fast, I will look up burdock, because that's a root, right? And I will see what it says. So for the fresh root, it's exactly what I said. Also, the ratios are different. It's a 1-to-2, and that tends to be pretty typical of any fresh herb tincture. I just made one out of hibiscus from my garden. It's a 1-to-2 ratio, and then the alcohol to water ratio is 75% alcohol, 25% water, like I said before. Only I still just have spiced rum. So, oh yeah, this does impart a flavor, like a spiced flavor to the tinctures. So it's not a flavor neutral spirit by any means. But again, I'm sort of like, I know this is what I have, so this is what I use. So anyway, so for fresh, it is, 75% alcohol, 25% water. I still just use this, and hopefully it turns out fine. But the tincture of the dry root, he actually even says preferred. Like he makes notes. This book is so good. Go straight to his website. I'm going to link the book down to his website, not Amazon. Go support him directly, because, Amazon takes a chunk, and half the time, I don't know. I have issues with Amazon. Anyway, the tincture of the dry root, it's still a 1-to-5. So, 1 by weight, by grams, to 5 liquid, by volume of herb to menstruum, or spirit. And then it would be the same thing. You'd probably powder it up a little bit, and or just sort of break it up a bit like we did here. Although with roots, they're heavier and they take up less room. So it's not as necessary. Like you would still end up with a liquidy tincture, even not having to break it up too much. But it's still a good practice. And then you go ahead and use your vodka or your spiced rum or your mixed grain alcohol with distilled water and get to getting making your tinctures. So anyway, that's the process, and hopefully you liked this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment down below if you'd like to see any more videos like this where I go through kind of the procedure of herbalism and herbal medicines. I've shared before that especially for prepping, I really appreciate a tincture because it preserves the properties of the plants for far longer than they would stay true in this form. So this form really is only good for a year and a half at most, maybe 2 years, maybe, but it's at its best as soon as possible. And so also with Mountain Rose herbs, I like that they have a packing date. Like this was packed on March of 2020 and it's November of 2020. So this is still pretty fresh and good. So like now's the time to be tincturing it and making sure that it doesn't just like sit in my cupboard for forever, just like losing its efficacy. And yeah, so it's good to get that, and it's a great way of preserving it. And then it's a handy way to share if you are wanting to share like I am, because I'm essentially I am currently building a clinical knowledge base without being an herbal clinician or clinical herbalist. But I'm getting that experience now. So anyway, all right, cool. Seriously, I'm leaving now. I hope the rest of your day is good and your life stays wonderful. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.